Welcome to this week's edition of Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Chih-Chung Wu. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Rome, which began the process of EU integration. So what are the future prospects of EU expansion, and what are the possible implications of EU expansion for Taiwan? And these are the topics we want to talk about today. To join us today is Dr. Wu Zizhong, who is the Secretary General of EU Study Association in Taiwan chapter. He is also Alliance FranÇaise in Taiwan. Dr. Wu, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you. As we know that the process of EU expansion is continuing, what are the impacts or implications of this process for Taiwan?
I believe that the most important thing, and we are talking very often in Taiwan, either in China, is the model of the European integration. Mm-hmm. Because as we know, if we look back the history of Europe, they are also sometimes divided, and sometimes mm-hmm. some people, some leader want to conquer and unify Europe. Mm-hmm. So somebody in Taiwan and China believe this is the same history that we can learn between Taiwan and China from mm-hmm. Europe, and to believe that one day Taiwan and China will be unified mm-hmm. as the model of Europe. So when we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Europe, many people in Taiwan and either in China say that one day we can learn this model from Europe and become a country.
But what are the major features or characteristics of European integration process?
I believe the major characteristic is that they are based on sovereign country. Mm-hmm. And on the past, those countries have so many war and conflict between them, mm-hmm. but finally they make peace. And now you can find that the European continent is becoming the most peaceful and the most have the most prosperity mm-hmm. region of the world.
Mm-hmm. But so we know there are also difficulties in the process.
Yeah.
How do they overcome the difficulties in the history?
I believe if, for example, people like me who live in Europe for 10 years will learn that so many things passed by negotiation mm-hmm. and can never use weapon, never use force to force another country to mm-hmm. accept. Mm-hmm. And it is never a big country that force a small country to accept. Even it is a good thing mm-hmm. For the country. For example, we can find the example of Norway mm-hmm. that refused several times. Even Denmark refused several times what the European Union proposed to them. Mm-hmm. So until now, Norway is still outside the European Union.
Mm-hmm. But again, as you say, that countries like Norway or either other countries are still outside the European Union.
Yeah.
What do they have in mind?
They continue to try to cooperate with European country, mm-hmm. and the most important thing for those countries, they are not only Norway, also we can find Switzerland. Mm-hmm. They believe that the interest of the nation is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And if people don't consider that to be integrated in the European Union as a big interest for their mm-hmm. country, and that they will refuse the integration mm-hmm. inside European Union. And they consider also that the sovereignty is very important for a small country. They want just to be lost in a so big region, and mm-hmm. then in the future, one day to say we cannot no more find the specialty, mm-hmm. The history of their past.
Yeah, but the referendum on the EU constitution was failed
yeah.
in France and also in Holland.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that there are countries or even people objecting to this kind of further integration among European countries?
I think that it is certain that the European Union brings so many good things in the continent, especially, I repeat again, the peace. Because at the beginning, when European community was established, is one of the most important purposes is to face to the threat of Soviet Union. And since the Soviet Union is not exist anymore, so now they can live with peace. But I believe that this kind of constitution in establishing is making so many good things for them. But you can imagine a country like France, they make so important for their sovereignty,
That's right.
their independence. So even we can say that European Union was bring by the French spirit, but the people are still very doubt what the European Union can bring them in the future. And the people like Holland is the same thing. When they see that a country like Turkey, like other countries, there are so many new countries will go inside the European Union. They consider that the European Union is becoming not so efficiency. So they just think that maybe we can try to think another way and to bring European Union integration again in the table and to think a new future, but not like what the constitution have bring for them.
Some people hold a very optimistic view, saying that in the end there will be a United States or Europe.
Yeah.
Do you share with that kind of?
I don't think so. I think even now, if you ask the question for this specialists, I mean European Union specialists, they will tell you that we are establishing a European Union. It's a union. It's a nation union, but it's not. It's not a federal model. So they don't want to create a new country. They still want to keep their sovereignty. They can increase their cooperation. They can increase so many direct cooperation that bring prosperity. But never they have the intention to create a new country.
Yeah, EU now is expanding. Starting from 15, 25, 27, and so on.
Yeah.
If the EU continues to grow with increasing numbers of member states, will there be more opportunities or challenges facing EU?
Of course, I think the more simple thing is that on the past, the EU is just 6 countries, then to travel to 15. You can imagine a decision made by 6 countries and now by 27 countries. How the big difference. And just look recently when we have the Berlin Declaration, the Chancellor of Germany just even dare not to ask the new member to sign something, but they just made a declaration because now the mechanism of decision is becoming too complicated. So the EU is faced a bigger and a bigger challenge, and especially I think the most important thing is the mechanism of decision became so complicated, even some countries cannot accept.
Some countries or some regions are very worried about EU becoming a dominant power in the world. And they are also concerned about whether EU will become a regionalism, excluding other regions and so on. Do you think that's a possibility that EU will become a protectionist regional bloc?
I think it's a big debate inside the European Union. For example, a country like France or like Germany want to really create a bloc of a European Union. But some countries like UK don't think about that. They just want to create, if you can say, a very big FTA, a model of FTA. But France want to create some kind of model just look like a country. So even inside the European Union, they have a big debate. So I think it's too early now to think about that, to say that one day the European Union will become a big empire that will threaten other countries. But it is true that inside the European Union, because of the European Union regionalism, because they make so many efforts for their economic exchange, for their trade. So now inside you can find a total free trade, a very successful model of a successful economic model inside the EU. So it may be exclusive faced to other countries. So it may create a problem in the world economy.
I think EU started as an economic organization and then began to have more influence on the political front and so on. Do you expect to see more influence on the EU part in terms of diplomatic, military, and even political influence over the world?
I believe yes. They continue to have increasing influence because, in fact, EU now is the biggest economic market of the world, and even EU is the second military power of the world. So if you put every country together, so it's normal that because you have power, then you have more influence. But of course, it needs also the coherence between the European countries. They need to have a unified foreign policy, and it is not very easy.
But as you say that they are talking about so-called common foreign and security policies. So far, we haven't seen anything in concrete, right?
No, I think, for example, in the Iran nuclear event, European Union is playing some significant role in Iran. So in Middle East, EU is trying to do something, and of course they are not the role of the USA. But I think it takes time. It takes time to have a more discussion, to have more concession between European Union countries. And if the time is coming that they have their position, then they can play a very big influence. Another example I can say, for example, all the European countries have the one China policy, and for us, it's not positive for us, but the one China policy of EU truly help China to threat Taiwan and for example, to block Taiwan outside the WHO. So you can find that the common foreign policy of EU can play some kind of role in the conflict, in the regional conflict of the world.
But speaking of one China policy, could you explain to us more in specific what is the very nature or what is inside the so-called one China policy?
I think the EU one China policy is that we don't like the one China principle. It means that it's not so flexible as the one China policy of the US, even of Japan. Inside the EU, if you look back before 1972, when we are still in the UN, some European countries tried to help Taiwan and to make some proposition in the UN for a true China policy, but was refused by Taiwan and China at that time. So now all the countries say that there is only one China in the world, and Taiwan is a part of China, and it is very clear in the European one China policy.
But does it in any way obstruct the relationship between Taiwan and the EU?
This, of course, even they have this kind of one China policy, but as other country, just like other country, EU also have their formal representative in Taiwan. And I should mention one thing that is very important, is that all the people that work for the EU in Taiwan really are formal, are diplomat, not like in the
government officials.
It's government official. And before they come here, they can be an ambassador of some way, and they can go after to be nominated in Taiwan. They can become another ambassador. So I think in formal, of course, they consider they have their one China policy, but in practice, they give so many places to let us to imagine and to have the room to operate a good relation between and even formal relation between Taiwan and the EU.
But we've been seeing that EU countries are moving closer and closer to China in general, in principle. Are you concerned about possible distance growing wider between Taiwan and the EU?
I think, of course, that now the EU-China policy is becoming, we can say, formal recognize China as a growing power of the world. But in the same time, I don't feel that the EU is abandoning Taiwan. Why? For example, in 2004, EU is still the first foreign investment in Taiwan. They even are bigger than Japan and the US in 2004. So when EU are taking a closer policy with China, in the same time they are not abandoning Taiwan. So I think it's normal that the EU consider China as a big power and will play an important role in the world. But they don't mean that they will abandon Taiwan. So I think that's okay.
But in the bilateral relationship between China and the EU, the so-called arms embargo issue has been there for quite some time. Do you expect to see any progress, in the eyes of Beijing, that there will be some progress of lifting the arms embargo against China?
For the moment, I think we can say that the EU is not tending to abandon the embargo policy toward China. For the past 2 years, EU have a good friends inside the country. It is France, and especially the President Jacques Chirac. But even with the so strong support of France, the European Union didn't abandon their arm embargo policy toward China, against China. So I think in the near future, and I have many talks with European Union officials, they said they are not tending to abandon the arm embargo policy against China. So I think for a near future, we can be satisfied for the European Union policy.
Another issue that has been very sensitive is the human rights issue. But as we can see that EU countries seems to be softer their stance in criticizing China's human rights. Do you think that's the case?
Sometimes they will be softer, I think, because they have some commercial interest. But sometimes they become very hard. I think it's just like the U.S. You know, because everyone want to make business with China, so they can change a little about their human rights policy. But I think in general, European Union countries still dare to criticize the China human rights policy. Especially recently, they criticized strongly their Tibet policy and their the human organ, consider the human organ to preserve the human organ policy. So I think I still continue to believe that the European countries still have their basic human rights policy in their common foreign policy.
Yeah, as you say that there is no formal diplomatic ties between Taiwan and the European Union countries.
Yeah.
But the substantial relationship between Taiwan and EU has been very robust.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we will talk about this kind of robust relationship between Taiwan and EU in their substance.
Okay.
Let's take a short break and stay with us.